Mark Weizser coming on to talk about the Georgia game and give us some secret tips on what Georgia's running down there in practice. Isn't that correct?
Mark, thanks for being with us. We appreciate it.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Good. How about you? And just tell us a little bit about what you do for the the Georgia beat writer for the Athens-Banner Herald.
Football, a little bit of basketball.
Gotcha. And let's we really hadn't had a chance to speak with a Georgia writer yet, but just kind of give us a recap of spring ball in Athens, if you could.
New quarterback with Hudson Mason taking over. Now he got a couple games at the end of last season when Aaron Murray went down with the torn ACL. So they got some good quality reps in big game situations for him. And the entire defensive staff turned over when Todd Grantham left for Louisville, and then the rest of his assistants all went their separate ways to various jobs. And Georgia made a quick hire, got Jeremy Pruitt from Florida State, and was cranked up this spring with a whole new staff.
Right, and looking at the quarterback situation, does it look like Hudson Mason is the front runner in that QB race?
It's not much of a race. I mean, Mason was kind of waiting in the wings for this job, and plus the guys behind him are not ready to be a starter at the SEC level. Mason had a chance to transfer a couple times, and even took a redshirt year just so he could have some class separation from Murray, so to get his chance to start this season. So he's been waiting for this, and they think he can do everything Murray can. He just doesn't have the game experience that Murray does, but they're confident that. He can run their system and probably do a little bit more up-tempo than they've done in the past even.
Looking at the offense as a whole, got some wide receivers back for Georgia, and the two running backs, are they fully healthy now?
Todd Gurley had a good spring. He was banged up most of last year with an ankle injury, still almost rushed for 1,000 yards. And Keith Marshall was limited this spring, coming off his ACL, did some work in practice, non-contact, but is expected to be, close to 100% in June. And then they got a couple of big-time running backs coming in this signing class in Sonny Michel from one of the schools in South Florida, and a kid named Nick Chubb, an in-state kid from Georgia. Both those guys, by most of the recruiting services, are five-star guys, so they have a lot of talent at that spot.
And looking at the defensive side of the ball with new coordinator Jeremy Pruitt, what kind of improvements do you see there? I mean, what do you think he's trying to install? I mean, how long do you think it will take for him to get his defensive scheme in place?
Yeah, I'm not sure if he has necessarily as much talent as he took over at Florida State when he, in 1 year there as coordinator, he was, they won the national title, but they were already pretty loaded there. Georgia's got, some of the best linebackers around in guys like Jordan Jenkins, Ramik Wilson, Leonard Floyd, a guy that's really can come off the edge. But their big questions remain in the secondary, where they just had all kinds of trouble last year and had some infamous plays like the Hail Mary against Auburn that cost them that game. He ended the spring with a couple of walk-ons and starting spots in the secondary. I'm not sure how long that's going to stick, but he's at least saying that everybody's fighting for their jobs, and he's moving guys in and out of the lineup to try to find the right combinations, the right guys.
Right, and looking at the, I hate to harp on it, but the Georgia suspensions, Clemson has a couple too, but it seems like it happens every year. What are your thoughts on that?
Georgia's policy is such that they have a pretty strict policy on their drug testing, and anybody gets arrested for a marijuana possession charge, gets caught in a dorm like happened with Josh Harvey Clemens last year, they're going to be suspended 10% of the season on a first offense. They're going to be suspended for 4 games on a second offense, and then kicked out of the program for a third offense. That doesn't help in terms of some of their competition. The SEC does not have that stringent a policy. They've also just had some guys that have kind of probably made some knucklehead decisions in terms of some thefts that they've had. They have 4 guys now that were charged with double dipping their tuition checks. And Mark Richt hasn't announced if those guys are going to be suspended for Clemson or not. But they have some talented guys there. Trey Matthews, a safety that might be a starter. James DeLoach, who really came on at defensive end this spring. And a couple other guys. So we'll see how that pans out.
Right, and Georgia's schedule last year was just one of the toughest in the country. And looking at it again next year, they do have to open with Clemson and South Carolina again. How do you think that plays out again? I mean, they did draw a tough schedule again.
Yeah, and it's kind of Damon Evans, who was the athletic director until 4 or 5 years ago when, he was forced out after a DUI in a situation, ugly situation in Atlanta involving a woman. But his philosophy was to play, beyond Georgia Tech, another BCS conference opponent. That's why they scheduled Clemson home and home. They had Arizona State, Colorado, Oklahoma State. But Greg McGarity, the AD now, kind of going in a different direction. I think you'll see these kind of matchups. There's been some talk about Notre Dame and a couple other programs, but I think it'll be kind of an every 3-year type deal or every 2 years. It'll remain to be seen. But next year in 2015, they don't have these kind of opponents besides Georgia Tech. They got some Georgia Southerns, Southern of Louisiana. Those type of schools. So this year with Clemson, South Carolina, the only saving grace about that is they have a week in between those games. So they have a really early off open date on the schedule. So they can game prep again fully for South Carolina after Clemson.
And with Clemson winning the game last year, what do you see? Just looking way ahead, some trouble spots for Georgia that Clemson may be able to give them.
I guess I've seen interviews with Ebba Sweeney talking about their experience on the defensive line. Georgia's lost 3 starters on the offensive line. They feel good about some of the guys that they'll have there, but it'll be the first game. So those guys, in terms of whether they had the right combination, it'll remain to be seen. I know they've had some problems blocking on the edges. John Theus, the guy that was at right tackle last year, they're moving him to left tackle probably. He's worked at a couple spots this spring, but that'll be one of the keys to that game. It'll be interesting, I guess, to see once Malcolm Mitchell is back in the lineup for Georgia and they're full go with at wide receiver. Whether how they'll match up with Clemson's secondary, if Clemson can handle that, with Hudson Mason. But Todd Gurley there and Keith Marshall, et cetera. It's going to be you can't really. You're going to probably have to leave some guys open on the outside in some one-on-one matchups if you want to crowd the box.
Right, and looking at the SEC schedule, the 6-1-1, where do you fall on that on the 8-game schedule that was ruled a couple days ago?
For a school like Georgia, it's pretty difficult to if you go to 9 games and you have Georgia Tech on the schedule, you're talking 10. Pretty high-quality opponents, and that only leaves 2 other games on your schedule. If you're going to schedule another, BCS conference, I guess you're not saying BCS, Power Conference foe now, you're really talking about one, easy cakewalk guaranteed win. So it's tougher for the teams that have, the in-state rivalry non-conference game. For other folks like Alabama that have Auburn in the same conference, they can schedule those types of games and still have more flexibility in their schedules. But it'll be interesting to see how it plays out with the selection committee. Whether if there's a snub here or there by an SEC team, whether they move to non-conference games, a few years down the road.
Right, and just your overall thoughts on both schools, Clemson and Georgia, losing big-time quarterbacks Taj Boyd here and then Aaron Murray. What kind of shoes does Hudson Mason really have to fill? Because I think Aaron Murray was he was really, he was one of the most underrated. He really could go in there and sling it around.
Yeah, I mean, Murray's big knock until last season was he couldn't win the big games, and if you looked at his record against top 10 opponents, that was probably accurate to a certain extent. Not that he was solely responsible for that, but I think he proved a lot last year. Winning games against South Carolina, winning games against LSU. Early in the season, and when they lost a lot of their playmakers through injuries, they pretty much had every wide receiver or running back out at one point or another during the season. He really carried them, almost won at Auburn, despite all that. So he's probably going to be first 3-round type guy in the NFL draft, and who knows, he might be a starter in a couple of years, if not earlier.
Right, completely agree with that. And Mark, thanks for joining us again. And just tell people where they can find you and what y'all will be covering throughout the summer months leading up to that rematch between the Hedges.
It's onlineathens.com is the Athens-Banner Herald website. We'll be covering, I guess, between now and then. I mean, I guess some of the recruits coming in, gearing up for that, some position breakdowns, and Rick, like Dabo and every other coach out there, is talking to fans at various stops. So we'll be hitting a couple of those sites and seeing what the coaches have to say.
All right, thanks, Mark. We appreciate the time. Thank you.
Okay, take care.